I said, God knows every single thought. He's gonna show you every thought. He's gonna show you every word, every instance, every interaction, every facial interaction. He's gonna show you in life revealed. But in every little flash of an instant of everything that was going on, I knew he was showing parts of my life throughout. You could feel it go through your soul as well as seeing it. And you can literally feel the intensity of your greed on all those moments and the intensity of the hate in your mind and in your words to others. I was saying to myself throughout my soul, I was doing this all wrong. I did it all wrong. I did it all wrong. I was doing it all wrong on earth.
My guest today is Darrin Pelly, who had a near death experience with a life review. And I am so excited to dive down deep and ask a lot of questions and find out exactly what happened to him. So, Darrin, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a privilege and an honor to be on the show and to just tell the experiences that I went through.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's start first with your near death experience. I know you've had some other experiences, and I would like to talk about those, but let's begin with your near death experience. So, why don't you go ahead and tell us about that?
Yeah. So my near-death experience happened when I was around 30 years old. I had previous ones in my teens and in my 20s, but I didn't know where I was at the time. I didn't really have the fullness of the experience in depth. And they all linked afterwards. I knew where I was on all the other NDEs when I was and basically I was in comas because of I'm a type 1 diabetic. I went into insulin reactions, into full comas, near death basically situations, catastrophic images of me on a floor in a full sweat and basically in unconscious. And when I was 30, what really happened was really unique. I was coming home from work, and when I get home, working long hours, 10-hour days or so, and I get home and I was exhausted, just terribly exhausted on my feet all day. And I ended up going, my blood sugar was getting low. And what happened was I ended up going upstairs and just lying down in bed before eating, and which is the worst thing to do for any type of type 1 diabetic is they need to eat if they're going low. But I ended up going lying down, and somehow my wife got me out of the bed. I don't know how she got me out of bed. She got me into the hallway, and I was literally in the hallway with her on the third floor of our two-family home, and I was reaching out to her, and my right hand was reaching out to her, and I was coming out of my body. It was a true out of body experience. I was being lifted out of my body up into the ceiling of the corner of the car of the hallway, and I could see my body standing there. I could see my body, I could see her, I could see me reaching out to her. It was unbelievable. I was up in the ceiling, and I'm like, wow, it was just amazing to be able to see my body still alive, still there, not collapsed on the floor, like other low blood sugar reaction comas that I've had that other people have saved me and bringing me out of those, which I was literally in a terrible condition. But I was lifted out of my body. I was taken out of my body into the saline, and it was quite remarkable to be able to see it and see me reaching out, still alive, still standing. And it brought it when I went back into that review later on after coming out of my NDE, it I understood being taken. I understood that I feel as though the Lord takes you well before you die. Not well before you die, but doesn't let you experience death. To me, that's what it felt like. I was able to not experience my last moments at all. The pain of it, the last breath or anything. And I was able to see my body still alive. And that to me brought me to the revelation of God Himself taking me from one life to everlasting life, and it was to everlasting life that I proceeded to be in, after me being out of the body and looking down at myself, still handing out to my wife at the time. And to me, I always want to tell people about this because for 20 years, this is when I was 30. For 20 years, I want people to know that that I feel strongly that the Lord won't let you witness and feel your last breath in death. He will take you well before. And if you research any type of NDEs and look at many stories, you there are similar stories like this of people seeing their body, leaving their body, and being taken before even witnessing or feeling the pain of death.
I'll second
Yeah,
that because I've watched, listened to, and read over 2,000 experiences of near death. And in so many, the vast majority, they are describing what you're describing, where they've left their body, they didn't feel the pain, they didn't have the trauma of that.
nothing. And to me, so many people in this world worry about death. It's one of the major things most people can't even talk about just from the stress of it alone. I want you to know, all your viewers, everybody that watches this show, I want you to know what I just said. You don't experience it. You might, the worst thing I worry about now as I come back, I worry about the suffering up to the death. The painfulness of it. That is that is important. That's critical, and hopefully that's not a factor in one's life. But to not know and think you not know, I am telling you that you do not experience the final moments. The Lord takes you out of your soul, out of your body, and you get to feel nothing, no pain, no worries, nothing. You don't experience any joint pain, any type of pain that you might be in is completely gone. And you're still looking at your body. You're still looking at the surroundings. I am up on the third floor of my two-family house, and I'm just looking at myself still reaching out. I was shocked at just seeing it, and seeing it as I would describe it as a drone lifting up from the ground, literally from that perspective. It was just like that. Um, it was kind of close though, as I'm drifting out of the body, almost backwards, and upwards. So you could see lifting out of the body, and that type of viewpoint, and lifting up. And I'm not sure why up, but up high up into the corner where I knew it was up in the corner, but I didn't have any visual aspect of the corners of the walls up in the corner. I knew it was higher up. Not through the ceiling, of course. I don't believe, but in the perspective, I was always looking straight down at my standing body, reaching out to my wife. And that's just the beginning of the NDE. It was an out of body experience, which was tremendous all by itself, and so monumental and letting people know about what I know,
Yeah, thank
about
you.
death. Yeah. Yeah. So after that, I wasn't able to see my body anymore. I wasn't able to see my wife. And I was in this massive whirlwind, and I try to capture it in a book I wrote. I try to capture the whirlwind like a tornado, but bigger. You see these small little tornadoes, but I'm in this massive whirlwind, and it is spinning like crazy, a whirlwind. And so I looked up in scripture when I came out of my ND about whirlwinds in the Bible, and it does have, I think, Elijah's death of a whirlwind, which was so pleasing to me to know I was in a whirlwind, and I know that Old Testament biblical scripture has deaths of Elijah in a whirlwind, or I think it was I forget the other person in the Bible, but I looked it up because it was so predominant. It was so insane of a whirlwind. It was amazing, and I was also getting a lot of laughter of innocent children was surrounding me within this whirlwind, and it was pure. It was like the laughter of like a 2-year-old that's so innocent and pure. And it resonated throughout the whirlwind. And I could hear it throughout. And I could also feel it through my soul. And that was like instantly, once in the whirlwind, I started hearing all around me and feeling this pureness, the innocence of a small little child, not the deception of a 7 or 8-year-old, of a giggle, the pure innocence of the laughter of a child. And to me, that brought me so much peace, so
Oh,
much not knowledge, but so much comforting peace. It reminded me when I was a young child prior to diabetes, back to my childhood, when I was 7, 8 years old, or 6, 7, 8 years old, and the innocence of it all. But it also brings me to, as I talked about scripture, it brought me to scripture about, you know, I thought these were signs. I still feel they were signs in this NDE. Christ says to his disciples, and they're all arguing which disciple is going to be the best and sit to the right of Christ in heaven. And Christ gets upset with them, and he says to them, he says, unless you all become like a child, none of you will enter the kingdom of heaven. And that to me resonated in me completely. But it was pure. It was so pure. It was remarkable to feel it through the soul, through your entire soul. And following that was, in this time you don't have any pains, no worries, no hurting, nothing. You're in full soul, and I can feel the Lord's love enter throughout me. And God's love is insanely massive. Like the words, the English language is too simplistic to describe it. It's just it's so large how much he actually loves just you, and he lets you feel everything of his love and his greatness and gloriness within your soul. It was it was it was unbelievable to feel the love that filled my entire soul to the smallest molecular level. I try to tell people, and I write it in my book in such a way that if you have an amazing love moment on earth in your heart or in your mind that you felt, you take that love moment that was so intense that you felt in your life, and you put a multiplier factor on it, like 10,000 or 100,000. Now, us as humans, we can't feel that much love of that intensity times 10,000. But if you can imagine that size of a love that you could possibly feel, that's that large and grandiose of love effect. You take that high intensity love and you put it in every single cell of your body and every single cell of your soul, and that's what God's love encompassing you is like in spirit and soul. And that's what it was like for me. It was and then his power, just his power, is a magnitude even 100 times more than that. His power is insane, unbelievable,
Wow.
and you could feel it throughout your soul. So one thing I learned is, as I'm in this and I have the Lord within me, I'm trying to gather my thoughts. Things are going really fast, and I'm like, I'm trying to think of something like a question, and I can't even remember the question, and I keep on thinking it over and over. And it's kind of like, it's a yes or no question, and instantly, before I even can think of the question in my soul, it's answered automatically, telepathically throughout. That resonates either a no or a yes or whatever the Lord. He already knew what I was going to ask, and it already answered it instantly, like a millionth of a second, like that quick, like before I could even ask the question in the thought of my soul. It's shocking how connected He is with you,
Mm.
and and leaving your body and being what I would call in the presence of the Lord, and to the point where He already knew what I was thinking. So I try to tell people, that have a strong faith, or people that might not, that I know the Lord knows every thought that you think right now. And I teach kids in my church, catechism, and they always say, well, I do good, Mr. Pelly. I try to help people. I talk nice to people. I said, yeah, but you judge people in your mind. I said, God knows every single thought. He's
I
gonna
said, God,
He's gonna
God knows
show
every
you every
single
thought.
thought.
He's gonna
He's going to
He's gonna
show
show
you
you
every
every
thought.
word,
He's
every
going to show
instance,
you
every
every
interaction,
word,
every
every
facial
instance, every
interaction.
interaction, every
He's gonna show
facial
you in life reveal,
interaction. He's
which
going to
I
show you in
ultimately
life
went
reveal.
into, which was really quick. It was amazingly fast. I could see I could see everything in front of me. Like a
How
big
did you see it? How did you see it? What did it look like?
Well, to me, it was like a really quick projection screen going fluttering through my mind or my soul, and I could interpret every single almost interaction. But it was quick. It was really fast. But in every little flash of an instant of everything that was going on, I knew he was showing parts of my life throughout. You could feel it go through your soul as well as seeing it. And you could literally feel the intensity of your greed on all those moments and the intensity of the hate in your mind and in your words to others. And in the background, all throughout your soul is his love, is reassuring, almost, prodigal son, unbelievable love that I described all around you, but he's let fluttering through your soul the visions of all your interactions. Now, I'm only 30 at the time, right? So I can't really see too much because 30 years of interaction is quick. I thought it was quick, but all the interactions happen so fast that I don't you have no time. There's no way of telling time. None whatsoever. And I could probably elaborate for hours on just that life reveal, but it was really a bunch of my interactions, my thoughts, what people what I did to people, what I saw in people's faces. I remember one instance that someone was trying to tell me about something they achieved, and I was one-upping them in this conversation. And I was like, oh, I did this and I did this. And I'm living in what I call the flesh of me. And he's showing me that really quickly, and how that other person was so upset from his glory and his accomplishment. And I took it all away from him. And I was like, I was so upset feeling that and seeing that in the friend that I was talking to. But in the background, his love was so profound. It was so amazing. You had the sense that he loves you all along, but he just wants to show you not only your terrible moments in life, he showed me the glory of me in him, through him, with him to others. That to me was the spark of love flowing through me in my interactions as well. I mean, it's not all just terrible life reveal, but he lets us see it all, you know. In the first instance, when he came into when the Lord came throughout my soul, right after the laughter of children, instantly, absolutely 100% instantly, when I felt the simplistic, and I mean like the pureness of an innocent child, the simplistic of his love is so amazingly simplistic. It's so incredibly simple throughout your soul, but so enriched and the magnitude is so insanely crazy throughout your soul, but his love is so simple. I was saying to myself throughout my soul, I was doing this all wrong. I did it all wrong. I did it all wrong. I was doing it all wrong on earth. I was kept on repeating that and repeating that in my soul and my mind, just from the reflection on how simple his love was. It's almost like it's like this. It's like when you were younger and you were having a math problem, or you were in math for, let's say, seventh grade or whatever, in algebra, whatever, geometry, and you couldn't figure out an equation. You had no clue how to do it, and your parents were getting mad because they were trying to help you. You just couldn't do it. And then suddenly someone came along in your class in the library, sat down, and showed you the way how to simplify that equation, and then it pops right into your head, and you're like, wow, how simple was that? And I couldn't get it for weeks. That's the feeling I got when his love entered me. It was like, oh my gosh, it, it it's that simple to do. That
Darrin, can you
simple.
can you tell us what he looked like?
Well, that's the thing. I really didn't see. My NDE story is not one of those long ones where I was in some other facet of seeing relatives or anything like that. I actually, in the tail end of the NDE, I was able to see the robe of Christ, the whiteness of the robe, and I knew it was Christ. You could feel it throughout my body. I was in the like a kneeling position, almost looking up, and this robe came at me like this, right in front of me, like a foot, and it came from a distance and came at me, and it was purest white I've ever seen. I've seen baby calves across my street, and the pureness of that white is magnificent. But the white robe of Christ was amazing. It was grandiose white, the whitest white, dental white you could ever possibly. The light of it was remarkable. And so of course, as I felt the Christ within me and the Lord within me, I look up and I'm looking for his face, right? And all I could see is this bright, bright, bright light coming right at me, to the point where I'm like twickering, looking at the sun, but even 100 times worse than that. And I want to see his face. I'm looking up and I want to see his face, and all I could see is like I can barely see it. I could see his jawline and his eyebrow right up here, and it was it was amazing, but it was so bright I couldn't see his face. And I talked to a priest down the street at my church, and he's a new priest. So I ended up telling him about this story, because he's new, and I'm teaching the 10th grade confirmation class and ninth grade confirmation. And I told him the story, and he's like, there's a reason why you didn't see the face of Christ. And I said, why is that? I said, it doesn't make any sense. Why? And he says, because you were to come back. You weren't to stay. And that reassured me in a way. But man, I really wanted to sit with Christ and see his face, and ask him any question that I wanted. But instantly after that, at that particular point in my NDE, I was already going into my body, back into my body, and that was remarkable. That to me was the
Tell
most
us about
just.
that.
Oh yeah, that was. It's like, I haven't read many NDEs, but I know I've heard of some in past conversations. But mine, coming back, I was still in soul, in spirit, and I was reciting the Our Father, the prayer. Um, the Our Father, was reciting it in soul, and it was running through me in soul. So I was saying the Our Father, and as I was coming into my body, I could I could see I was high up. Again, I was high up in my body, and I'm chanting the Our Father, but receiving it in my soul, and saying it through my soul, and feeling every word in my body, and understanding the meaning of every word, and the meaning of every single sentence. It's filling my body as I'm chanting it and saying it, and I'm chanting it over and over and over again. And the intensity of the prayer words and sentences is just fluttering through my body like the love of God did, but in the physical body. It was incredible. And here I am up on the stretcher, sitting up on the stretcher. My head's up by the ceiling, right? The EMTs have to lift me over this railings, the spiral staircase, bringing me down stairs. And I'm up on the third floor, up on the stretcher, from the perspective of the out of body experience. So when I'm first coming into my body, I'm like, am I still out of body? But of course, I'm in body, chanting and feeling the Our Father. I must have recited it 10, 20, 30 times by the time I'm fully downstairs in the ambulance, and chanting it, feeling the words, to the point where every time since my NDE, I pray the Our Father, I resonate in those words, mind and spirit and heart. And I say it with with passion, with the for the love of God gave me that, coming back. And it's such a wonderful prayer. It's at the end. I have a prayer process that I learned from another book that I read, that I also describe in my book, but it helps me connect with Christ and God in prayer. A lot of people don't know how to do that. And to the point where you can feel God's knowledge and love within you, and you break down. You actually get a connection, not as so grandiose and so large as what I described, but it's close to a point where you can actually feel God within you in prayer. Feel him in your mind, feel his love in you, um, feel his knowledge. So I, at the end of my prayer process, I say the Our Father all the time. And it's only because I have it's a special feeling in me that I learned, and it's not a head prayer. It's a soulful heart and soul prayer that I go into in my prayer process that I do, that I teach a lot of my students how to connect with Christ, because young kids in America, especially in the Northeast where I live, they don't know how to fully connect in prayer with God. They don't. And we're not really taught what I've learned. We're not really taught how to pray and how to connect with God. I mean, a lot of churches, and any church you go to, and any faith that you have, there are great prayers to pray. But I'm talking about true connection. I'm talking about feeling the Lord within your heart and in your mind and in your soul during prayer, where you actually, I have many times broken down and cried for because of His glory and grace within me. No, no exaggeration. And then you're on this different level of life. You have Christ within you. You have God within you, depending on what religion you follow. And then you see things. You see signs, Larry. You see many signs,
Right.
many signs. I
Yeah.
mean, I could write a book on signs.
I
Um,
did.
I know you did. You told me, but it's true. I'm a musician. I've been a musician since I was 20 years old. But I see numbers. I see the angel, the number 66, all the time. A few years ago, and continuously, where it actually freaks me out, where you see it like 5 to 8 times a day, which is telling you something. And there's always something that happens too, slight indications of that sign, and it's spiritual. It's certainly spiritual.
Yeah.
And I see other signs. You see nature signs. I say prayers to God and ask that of Him being with me as a test and a sign. And I give Him a special prayer, and I said, "Hey, I'd like to see this happen to me. A little bird maybe fly over my car, a large bird actually fly over my car." And that had happened that particular day. That's a remarkable story. I was blown away because we all lose faith at times. We
Yeah.
all we all have these relationships with God, and then in the end of the day, you might and you might not. It's all about staying connected. And the more and more you stay connected in the certain ways throughout your life, the more and more you're going to see your life change remarkably. And the love of you and the peace of you and the consideration to others is going to flow naturally because Christ is going to be within you. And it connected all my other NDEs when I was in my comas. I could see the white light in my other NDEs, and I was so at peace. I didn't want to come out of my comas from all my diabetic comas that I had when I was younger. And I knew why I didn't want to come out. I didn't want to come back from being with God. Nobody wants to come back when they're with God. From this experience that I described, it's shocking to hear that a mom that has 4 kids that died said she didn't want to come back.
Yeah.
I don't blame her. It's that unbelievably remarkable. But
Well, Darrin,
yeah,
it is an amazing story. And you said that you mentioned that you had a couple of other near-death experiences that you remembered and connected after
right.
having this one at 30. So do you want to share a couple of those?
Yeah, so
Your
the
insight?
the near death experiences that I had when I was younger, having these insulin diabetic comas where I was completely unconscious, I wasn't able to see no tunnels, or I wasn't able to see anything. The love of God was basically, I gotta get emotional, but the love of God was basically holding me. His peace and his love was encompassing me, and the light was so bright, and I didn't get to see anything else. All I know, I was at peace and his love. And to me, it felt like he was holding me. And all those other NDE comas, unconsciousness, near death. I'm talking about death gargles situations, and I wasn't dead, but I was very, very close. And all that feeling of God's love holding me and the brightness of the light, I got to see when I was in that NDE that I just described to you. It linked everything of those NDEs in the past together with His love and grace and glory.
That's
Is
amazing.
let me tell you, but
Sure.
it's not as descriptive. I didn't have the vision in any of those, but the feeling, and I could see the white light. When I go low sometimes, and I know this might sound a little crazy, but when I go low, I can close my eyes and I can almost see, almost like a meditation third eye. If people read about that, I can see the brightness of white almost up front, and it's strange, but I can see that, and then it goes away as my blood sugar comes back. And it's
Hmm.
almost like, well, I don't want to die today. I want to keep on living my life. I want to help so many people, the youth, especially, and many others that are disconnected from God, and how to reconnect. My life has changed dramatically.
That's
And
wonderful.
yeah,
Wow. So,
and
can we go back to your last near-death experience and talk a little bit more about your life review?
sure, sure. I mean,
Okay.
it's what would you like to know more specifically? I don't know if I can add anything more to it, but go
So,
right ahead, Laurie.
I'm curious. So, you said that God was communicating with you telepathically and you would ask a question and you would get a yes or no answer instantly.
Yeah,
Did you ask anything about what the purpose of the life review was?
I did not, but I got after coming out and reflecting on everything, I got connections in some way on how those experiences that I had relate to living here and why.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
So to me, like his love is so simple that I learned instantly through that, knowing that I was doing it all wrong, that the simplicity of every interaction that we do to others and having Christ within you brings you to a different level where you're automatically without having to do anything, you're almost completely genuine. You come up to me any day of the week, I probably smile at you first thing. And those are the interactions that the simplicity of God let me feel within that NDE. NDEs are special people in this world.
Yeah,
I mean, if you look them up on YouTube and everywhere else, even on Facebook, there's a lot of people that have these experiences, and probably many more that haven't even told their story. But in the grand scheme of things, we're talking about 7, 8 billion people in the world. How many are NDEs? Do we have 100 million? Maybe I'm not sure, but it's still small. We have so much information to give, so much love to share, so much knowledge to share.
I love that every story has a little bit of a different nuance and you learn different aspects from each story that you listen to.
Yeah. And to me, I'm just a little story.
So, can you share a few more of the insights that you gleaned from either positive or negative things that you saw during your life review that stood out to you?
Well, it was basically the evil thoughts that I've had onto people and the evil ways that I was. And that came back to the simplicity of God's love. So it kind of interconnected throughout, and his love in the background was showing me he loved me no matter what. And he was showing me the negativity that I was doing throughout my life reveal. And he was trying to say to me, follow me to the best of your ability. I will always be there. And he's right. I'm a totally different person compared to when I was in my early 20s. And that's not just that's not experience wise. That's, this connection and then connecting in prayer after the fact is such tremendous, amazing um opportunity to actually feel God within you in prayer. And I that's the number one thing, when I learned that his simplistic love was backing me even through the nastiest things he was showing me that I was doing in life reveal. He it's not like he doesn't care. He's still in me throughout me in his love. And I automatically knew to start thinking simplistically of loving people. That life reveal was so amazing to learn in the background of him loving me so much and showing me those ways I was, and then connecting the innocent of the child laughter right into his love, how innocent, pure that was, right to the robe of Christ. That white, bright robe is innocent pureness, intensity. I just
Wow.
couldn't see his face. I was
Yeah.
so upset not seeing his face. Oh,
You were describing when you were watching your life review that you said to yourself over and over again, I was doing it wrong. I was doing it wrong. I wasn't doing it right. Did you get any response to those thoughts from God?
no, he let me understand that, and he let me reflect on me. And that was instantly when I felt all of his love rush through my soul and within me and stayed with me. So once I felt that instantly, right after the laughter of children filtering through my soul and hearing it, I could feel all of his love come into me. And the simplicity of his love made me ramble and think, oh my gosh, like the light bulb on when you figure out that math problem from a friend. It was that instant. I was like, man, that's what you wanted me to do all along. And
It
then
sounds more like you were judging you than he was judging you.
correct, absolutely. But then he brought me into life review and he let me see how I was doing it all wrong and good ways as well, but still with his love in the background of it all, like encompassing me. So I was doing it all wrong. I was doing it all wrong. He goes, oh, Darrin, let me show you. Let me just give you a gander. Let me just show you everything. Here you go. And like the quickest projection film that you could ever imagine, fluttering every single emotion, every word, every thought, flying through your soul and getting to see how you affected people. Ah, it sounds entertaining. We laugh, right? But it's powerful. And for me, for your viewers and anyone that watches this should affect you by me telling you this. This should tell you to look anew, repent, change. It's not that difficult to change. Change is difficult in marriages. People say you can't change your husband, you can't change your wife. We're talking about simpleness here, genuine. But God doesn't want you doing it all alone. It's impossible. The swings of our daily lives, the burdens of our lives, the stress, I get that taken away from me in prayer. It's remarkable when you can get your burdens lifted and your stress lifted in prayer.
So you have mentioned that you have a method of prayer. And I don't want you to give this away because I know that you talk about this in your book, but
Yeah.
can you give the people, for people who don't really know where to start, can you give them just a little glimpse of what you would recommend?
Yeah, I would strongly recommend, and you probably heard this over and over again, maybe throughout your life, but I would strongly recommend finding a place. Biblically, Christ says, go into a room and close the door and be silent, clear your head. So I teach a lot of people to find a room in their house or somewhere outside that they're not going to get any distractions whatsoever. You have to clear your mind of all the worries. You have to clear your mind of your thoughts of today and thoughts of tomorrow. You really have to settle in. It might take you longer to do that. With all the stress and anxiety we have in this world, I have an anxiety disorder. I have medication for it. And it's very difficult for me to get to that moment where I'm distracted. And even in prayer, you can get slight distractions of noise and things, and you just have to refocus and get back in. So that's the most critical thing is finding a quiet place where you're not distracted. And most prayers are simplistic. They're thank you, sorry, Lord, um, and thank you, sorry, and please, which is basically asking him for help for others or you. Those are three of the seven phases that I've learned about in a book that I've read. But I was already doing that prayer process. And in some ways, almost five steps, five phases earlier on in my life. But I was more angry at God earlier on in my life, asking him to heal people and stuff. But I learned other two steps and phases of prayer that really is conversational. It's really having a in-depth conversation, but describing from your heart what you did the day before, why you're so thankful for the people in your life or the things in your life that you know that the Lord placed there for you, describing it in detail to him. And if you describe it in detail, you will get the sense of God in your mind and in your heart. He will flow that love that you're describing into you more intently. He wants you to know. He wants you to describe things to him in prayer. It's a full-on conversation. I try and I describe it. I describe it in my book on chapter 6, where I go, how I start communicating, what I feel, how I've broken down so many times, crying uncontrollably, just from the a massive amount of glory and grace within me. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And then you're on this heightened level of peace because you're asking, and part of the prayer process, you're asking for Christ or God to come into you and take away the evil thoughts of the last few days, take away your evil ways, take away your burdens and your stress. And you can, at that point in the prayer process, you can feel the lifting of the evilness out of you, and you become enlightened. And then I ask at that point, once you feel that, I ask for the grace and glory of Him to be within me in fullness. And I'm telling you something, during that process, by the end, and I'm driving back home to my loved ones or driving to work, I am on a different level, different level of consideration, passion, love, respect.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. That's really insightful, and I'm sure a lot of people will get something out of it. I want to ask you one final question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you came back with, it sounds like, an ability to do some healing through these prayers. Can you share a story that was really impactful to you of one of those examples?
Yeah, but it wasn't the ability to do healing. It's the ability to pray for healing, for God's intervention, is what it really is. It's my ask. It's the Lord's intention and His path for that person in doing so. So as I pray for people, there are some instances where I know instantly that God says they're coming to me, they're coming home. And that one prayer session was thoroughly about my dad, who was near death, in his last moments of life. And I had to actually say goodbye to him. And it was painful. I was out front of my house and I was in a intercessory prayer with the Lord in depth. I could feel the mist and the fog in my mind of the Lord and the presence of Him. And it's that insane at times when I'm really in depth in prayer and I'm begging and pleading for Him. My father had pancreatic cancer, and
Oh,
I'm
I'm
begging
sorry.
and pleading for Him. And I write it in depthly in the book, and I knew that he was telling me in my heart, I could feel it, that my dad's time was up. He needed to come home to God, to Him. And I thanked Him, and I graced, His grace and glory. I thanked Him, and I said, do me a favor, Lord. This is what I asked Him. I said, in the last 2 weeks of my father's life, I have to go down to Florida and see him for the final time and be with him. And my mom was telling me everything that he couldn't do, and it was awful. And I asked the Lord, just give me a moment with my dad. Give me one last moment of peace and grace and glory with him. And it was amazing. It was amazing to be with him with my three older brothers. And I was in the room by myself. And I asked my mom, I said, Mom, I said, Dad, what do you want? This is final days of life. So what do you want? He goes, I would like a cup of coffee. And I said, okay. And I'm smiling because I could feel God in me. I could feel the Holy Spirit raining and burning. And I said, Mom, I said, can you make us a couple of cups of coffee? And she looks at me like mad. She's like, your dad's been throwing up. She's telling me this prior to me coming down. Everything that she gave him, he was throwing up. Green bile, everything, he's throwing up. And I look at her and I know from praying and the ask that I had with God, I know God was going to give me a moment with my dad. And, and so I'm laughing inside. And I said, Mom, and I looked at her again. I said, please, can you just get us 2 cups of coffee? And so my mom comes, she's shaking her head at me and she's mad at me because she doesn't want to pick up the throw up. And my dad sips the coffee. I'm sitting right next to his bed. I'm sipping the coffee. So this is good, Dad, huh? He says, yeah. And the next morning I did the same thing with him, and I had a cup of coffee with my dad, and God gave him that grace to be able to hold it in. He didn't throw it up. My mom was so shocked. Her jaw was dropping. She couldn't believe it because he was
Mhm.
throwing up everything for the last couple of weeks. And she was amazed. And I could feel God's presence in me in the sign of saying, this is your moment, to have with your dad. It was amazing.
Well, as
And
hard as it is to lose them, it must bring you such peace, knowing for sure what it feels like when you
Oh
die.
yeah. Yeah, so I know, and if this could be a great reassurance to everybody, I know what I described to you, what it's going to be like prior to not even feeling death. I know where my dad is, and a lot of people don't understand when people die, they're one with God. That's the name of my book. You're one with God, even though you see other NDE stories of seeing their families and being with their family members and stuff. They still have the resonation of God's love within their soul, right? Throughout the heavens, right? So you're one with God. I know my dad's one with God. As I pray to God, I can feel the Lord's love. I know that's part of my Father's love. I actually know that my Father wants to say something to me when I meet him. I already know it. And I already told him. I've already prayed to him many times. They said, I already told you not to worry about that. But I know, I write this in the book. I know that he wants to say it to me when he sees me. And I said, you don't need to. I've already, I've already, I've already said it's okay. And he still wants to tell me when he sees me. And I know he does because I can feel it, in praying with God. You can feel it. The oneness is just so insurmountable throughout everyone that has passed and your loved family members. I want you to know that. It's so amazing how at peace they are. I say that he's waiting. There's no time. So it's kind of ironic that he's waiting, right? Because there's no time.
Right?
You have no concept. So I'm trying to think this. I'm an engineer. So I'm trying to think about time. I'm like, well, if they're in heaven and they're not waiting because there's no time, so I should just pop up in heaven and be there with them instantly. And I'm not sure about that aspect of time in heaven. I'm assuming they're waiting because I've heard other stories where they say your time is not now. And they leave loved ones talking to loved ones and they're like, we'll be waiting for you. I think they're saying we'll be waiting for you because they know that loved one's going back and is going to experience time.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not, they're just there instantaneously, I think.
I think
But
so too.
Laurie, I'm not 100% sure.
I
But
heard that a lot. I've heard
from
that
an
a lot where they don't miss us because to them it's like they just saw us yesterday and they're going to see us tomorrow, where for us we're here for all these years, right?
correct,
Yeah.
tell you. This is just the beginning for me. I'm just starting out, and trying to tell the story and trying to tell your viewers so much information. And
Yeah.
and I have prayer requests on my website, www.onewithgodbook.com. And I get prayers from all over Vietnam. I get prayers from UK, people in California, Texas, Australia. And luckily I have the app that I just respond instantly if I can. And
Nice.
and some requests are difficult to read, but this world is difficult.
Well, for
And
those people who want to connect with you, I'll put down in the show notes the
yep,
information. And then will you tell us again what the name of your book is and where we can find it?
yes, it's One with God on Amazon. Um, just look up my name, Darrin Pelly, or One with God. And I got the tunnel. I don't think you can see it so well, but I got the tunnel, the clouds. Yeah. And I
Very
got
nice.
that's me with God walking through. And then the
Oh,
light is the robe that finally comes up to me. So I,
wow.
I tried to do that as best as possible to it's very difficult to get the cover design um as much as I wanted it.
I'm
But
sure.
oh
I'm sure.
yeah, Laurie,
These things are ineffable,
self
right?
self-published, you got to be wary of a lot of things that you're using on the cover and within the book, obviously.
Yeah.
So I'm a lot of stories too in the book about prayer and prayer prior to NDE, prayer afterwards. Other people, if you ever look up Alpha over in the UK, it's a basic Christianity teaching on YouTube with Nikki Gumbel. I put in some stories in there as well that were amazing, amazing stories of the love of Christ and others. You know, I'm hoping, and it doesn't matter if you're um, Protestant, Christian, Jewish, Muslim. It's God. To me, it can help many people, agnostic, even atheists. I mean, if you wanted to read and get some insight and still believe in however you believe, I'm okay with anything. If it does help you, I'm ecstatic. I'm
Mm,
so much pleased to know that it helps somebody.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Darrin, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for the courage to share this story because I know it takes a lot of courage to do this. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate you.
No problem. I'm happy to be on this channel, and I appreciate you inviting me. And to the viewers, just stay focused and trying to stay connected with God. You're going to see miraculous things change in your life.
Beautiful. Thank you.